the monarchy doesn't draft the speech, but the king comes as the mouthpiece of the Canadian state for a day, performing this ceremonial function that still centers royal legitimacy, the legitimacy of the monarchy and of the Commonwealth.
And so there is always a risk that there will be protests, unrest, ugly scenes.
But already there are some rewards. In the images alone, smiling crowds, Canadian flags, and a sovereign whose mere presence says a lot before he's even said a word.
Just such bootlickers, man. Such bootlickers. Like, the idea that having King Charles deliver the throne speech somehow proves Canada's sovereignty is just so fucking backwards. Like, it would be funny if it weren't the actual logic coming out of the Carney government at this moment. The throne speech is supposed to mark like the start of a new parliamentary session, Canada's elected government setting its course. So what message does it send when that speech is read, not by the Prime Minister, not by the Governor General, but by a literal British monarch who inherited his position because his mother wore a crown and died 3 years ago? You don't assert independence by having the descendant of your former colonizer open your parliament. That's not sovereignty. That's imperial cosplay. It's just absurd. And so there's people who will defend this, who say like, oh, but the king was invited by the prime minister, and okay. And the fact that the invitation came from Ottawa doesn't magically erase the power dynamic here. I want to see what Guilbeault has to say.
And read the speech from the throne. To remember, obviously Canada is part of the Commonwealth, but we are a sovereign nation. And to remind some of our allies that this is the case, I think was very important. And also in the speech from the throne, there were a number of messages from the crown about our shared history, but the fact that we are a sovereign nation. And I think that's, for a lot of people, it was a message that was important to hear.
How much of a message was this designed to send to our neighbors down south?
One relevant example of people who may have needed to hear that message. Yes, I would agree with that.
Would you say that?
See, this is the thing, that they're saying it like overtly. Once the king shows up, the whole hierarchy of like how empire was formed starts to reassert itself. Like, the monarchy doesn't draft the speech, but the king comes as the mouthpiece of the Canadian state for a day, performing this ceremonial function that still centers royal legitimacy, the legitimacy of the monarchy and of the Commonwealth. Like, any type of real republic wouldn't need to outsource the pageantry of opening a parliamentary session to a guy who just happens to be the head of state of 14 other fucking countries. And then there's this nonsense of like, the soft power thing, that Charles is some diplomatic weapon being deployed to show Donald Trump that Canada is its own country. Give me a break. Charles isn't Canada's asset. He's British. Like, the whole point of the monarchy is that it isn't Canadian. That's what makes it special. That's what people revere it for. And most Canadians, that's how they process this. And again, like, to prove Canada isn't the 51st state, it parades around the symbol of British imperialism. Again, it doesn't make any sense. You're trading one master for another and calling it freedom. It's not freedom. It's not sovereignty. It's Stockholm syndrome wrapped in a velvet robe. And most Canadians fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Every single poll shows that the majority either want the monarchy gone or just don't care enough to defend it. Quebec, only 14% want it to stay. The Bloc Québécois boycotting the throne speech wasn't some extremist stunt. It's the most representative act of the day. And there's like a simpler fix to all of this, and that's let the Governor General open Parliament. Or better yet, give Canadians a head of state, like I said, like how Ireland has a president. Elect someone who is supposed to be a representative of the head of state as a diplomat. Someone who is elected, accountable, and not some hereditary mascot. Keep the ceremony if you want, but ditch the colonial baggage. Because, again, flying in the British monarchy to prove your independence is like showing your new apartment while your parents still pay the rent. No one is impressed by this. They're just embarrassed for you that you have to do this. That's how people who are anti-monarchist feel about this. It's just absurd. It's just absurd.